Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our September 2015 Making Sense Project webinars for administrators. My name is Hilary Hunt. I'm the coordinator for the Making Sense Project, and it's a pleasure to welcome you here today to our program. Our agenda will begin with an overview of the webinar and a few instructions, and that'll be followed by two of our guest presenters talking about the importance of teaching personal finance from an administrator's perspective and the research that's in support of financial education. And then I'll be wrapping things up with some resources for helping you to implement financial education in your school or your district. As you're becoming familiar with the GoToWebinar panel, if you haven't used the system before, please note that you can choose to participate through your microphone and speakers on your computer, or those joining us live can call in via the telephone. You're welcome to offer any questions at any point in time. I will be tracking those and giving those to our presenters at the end of their presentation. You can also make a choice to view this in full screen. That's that little box there that's outlined here in gray. If you're having any challenges with your sound, I suggest first that you adjust your volume either on your computer or on your screen. We do have three presenters from three different locations with different technology, and our volume may change periodically throughout the webinar accordingly. These Making Sense webinars are a partnership between the Pennsylvania Department of Education and Penn State University, and it's part of a larger series of financial literacy and economic education initiatives that we do as part of the Making Sense project. As we talk about financial education, I thought I would just start us off with some of the broader picture before we turn things over to our guests. We have about 70% of adults in America that are worried about finances right now. This will probably come as no surprise to many folks. But this one I think is sometimes, this in particular statistic sort of caught my eye. 49% of full-time working young adults, so these are individuals that have a full-time job, are still relying on their family for financial support. So these are our graduates that are working and out in the workforce and are still relying on mom and dad or family for financial support. We also know that college debt is an increasing issue, and it's an even bigger issue for those students that are graduating or that are leaving higher education without a degree. And we now know that 30% of those students are dropping out without a degree. In some cases, this is due to the overwhelming amount of debt that they're racking up in college and want to get out in the workforce to be able to start paying that down. When it comes to personal finance mandates, lots of folks talk about financial education being a solution to some of these problems in the long term. We do see that in 2014, 17 states required a course in personal finance for graduation. And Dr. Hill will be talking a little bit more about the difference that these kinds of statewide graduation requirements can make in a few moments. However, I also sometimes caution folks to think of it looking a little bit more like this, because every state really is just a little bit different in how they implement financial education. Pennsylvania does not have a statewide mandate, but we now know that this was in 2013, we had about 38, roughly 40 school districts that were requiring a course in personal finance for graduation. Here you can see where they're distributed by county. You can see large concentrations in some areas of the state. And the good news that I have to share is that our recent review of state of graduation requirements throughout the state yields a significant increase, that we're now looking at 71 school districts that have a course, a standalone course that's required in personal finance. So you see the map has changed significantly just in the couple of years since this last review of Pennsylvania school districts was done. So we're seeing an increase both nationally as well as here in Pennsylvania, where this is a local control decision. There is some legislative activity underway right now that would make a capstone course in personal finance a graduation requirement. There is a bill both in the House and the Senate that calls for such a requirement to be made. So for those of you who are interested in that, I'd encourage you to look up that legislation and follow that, see where that might go. Now, obviously, I mentioned that this is a matter of local control at this point, without that legislation having gone anywhere. And certainly, we do see school districts that have chosen to make personal finance a graduation requirement. Mr. David Christopher is here from Juniata Valley School District, where he is the superintendent and was before the high school principal when the school district decided to implement a graduation requirement at Juniata Valley. So, David, I'm going to turn things over to you and welcome you on board to talk about your decision in your school district to make this a graduation requirement.
Okay, thank you, Hilary. I'll go ahead and get my my screen up here. So can you see that now, Hilary?
It's coming on. Yep, there it is.
Okay, great. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. Juniata Valley School District is a rural school district in central Pennsylvania. We're considered a high poverty school district by the Department of Education and also by some federal legislation looking at our free and reduced lunch count, which has vacillated between 42% and 46% of students. Actually, I think we're at 48 now for 2015, our most recent number. And we have about 18% of our students, based on census data, who come from 100% poverty families. So we have some challenges in terms of poverty, especially when we look at financial education and looking at college attendance. Huntingdon County, where JVSD is located, roughly has about half the people, adults over the age of, I believe it's 24, that have a college degree. So Huntingdon's at about 13% of adults have a bachelor's degree or higher, and the state average is 26%. So we know that most of our students, if they do attend college or they go to a technical school, are going to be considered first-generation college attendees. And I think for those individuals out there who deal with first-generation college attendees, there's a whole new challenge, especially with financial ed and taking on debt as it relates to college that you have to address. So in 2008, we began a financial education course. Actually started it with freshmen and then moved it up to the senior capstone course that we have, I believe, in 2010. To try and address some of these challenges. Our kids take a personal finance course first semester, and they also take an economics course first semester, and we actually have those off each other as part of the schedule. So kids have a semester of economics, semester of personal finance, which you principals out there, I know that makes things a lot easier in terms of scheduling. And in 2010, actually, is the year that we moved it to the senior year, we started seeing some big impacts. But in 2009, the district was ranked 27th out of 27 high schools in the 6-county area in the percentage of students we were sending to 2- and 4-year colleges. So we were at the bottom. And we realized that was not going to really serve our students well, and really made some strong pushes to try and fix that, because that was clearly not okay. So over the course of the next 6 years, we actually have moved all the way up to 3rd in that percentage, and looking at those same 27 high schools, which are in Center, Mifflin, Juniata, Bedford, Fulton, and Blair counties, and Huntingdon. So when we look at those counties, we're now up to 3rd, and we were 4th in 2012. And I think the financial education piece has had an enormous impact on our students' attendance at 2- and 4-year colleges. Students are much more able to operationalize how their long-term goals, goals of especially being able to support their families, because a lot of it's really based on, I think, a lot of FCS standards that we used to have in terms of really looking at family budgets and those kinds of things, and understanding how my earnings impact my ability to purchase things, and how my earnings impact my ability to to take care of my kids and those kinds of things. And I think having those conversations with our students and requiring it as a graduation requirement has really had an enormous impact on our students' ability to make good decisions as they graduate from us, and to really look at college and career planning in a different way. So when we look at those rankings, that's a major change for us. This year we were ranked number 975 out of 16,000 high schools in Newsweek magazine's Beating the Odds category, which looks at student performance on standardized tests, but also, one of the big factors is really looks at our 2- and 4-year college attendance rate. And last year, more than 85% of our kids attended 2- or 4-year colleges after graduation, which is up from roughly about 42% in 2009. So we're able to double that percentage and really help our students tremendously as they move out into the workforce. I think the other big piece is also the way kids were deciding about college has really changed. Our students really take a hard look at, okay, what is the bottom line? What is the cost? Is the degree that I'm seeking going to bear fruit? Am I going to go get a photography degree from, an art institute or something? And, what are their placement rates? What are the average earnings? Like, they're asking those kinds of questions now when they go on college visits, and they're looking for that information on the internet. And they didn't used to do that. I mean, I think we used to just pick what we wanted to do based on what we thought we liked. And while you still have to have likes and interests as part of the inventory that's using, you also have to look at job options and career options. And I think the personal finance class has really had a huge impact in the way that we do that, the way our students view that. Financial education needs to be a graduation requirement, in my opinion, in school districts. Our graduates have consistently said that personal finance and economics that they took at JV has really helped them understand debt, especially as it relates to college attendance. They also have said that it really has helped them just understand finances in general, understand how your checking account works, understand how a savings account works, understand why you need to start putting money into a 401k or a 403b almost as soon as you start working. I think our rates of students who have life insurance in their 20s, I mean, I don't have any actual data on that, but I've talked to a lot of our kids, and they're doing those kinds of things because they realize that it's really important for them, for their financial health to have those kinds of things in place. And like I said, our kids have made really a lot of good decisions. We have a lot more kids attending community college than we used to. And I think that's been a big factor, has been the financial ed piece, because they understand that these credits now transfer. They go to PASHE schools. They transfer to Juniata, which is our local liberal arts school. They transfer to Penn State, and those kids are saying, okay, I can pay half or a third, per credit for these gen ed requirements, and I can still get a great education and come out of college with a lot less debt. And those kinds of conversations, the district also participates in the College Advising Corps, which is a program that is run out of F&M with partnerships from Gettysburg and Dickinson College. And so we actually have a college advisor who 2 days a week, she's an AmeriCorps worker, who does individual work with students on literacy, as well, additional financial literacy. So in addition to having the Capstone course, we also have that, which I think has had an enormous impact as well in looking at how our students are doing and how they're moving forward. Putting it in a schedule is not really very difficult. First of all the materials are not expensive. In fact, they're free. So we get all our materials from the National Endowment of Financial Education, and they actually send us all the workbooks every year at no cost, which our teachers love, and they love the online activities the students are able to do too. They have all kinds of different synthesizers, and the kids get to go through these simulations and all kinds of things regarding their financial health as they get older. We've incorporated activities, throughout our grade levels, but really the Capstone course is certainly the biggest thing we do, those 2 Capstone courses. I think the other thing that we do, like I said, is the individualized college counseling, which has had a very big impact. I think one of the biggest things that helps you in terms of looking at financial education, especially like a personal finance course, is that Pennsylvania's requirements for individuals to instruct that course right now are pretty lenient. They give you a lot of flexibility. I mean, some years we have a social studies teacher teach that course. Some years we have a business and computer information technology teacher teach that course. You can have a family and consumer science teacher teach that course. You have a mathematician teach that course. So as a high school principal, when you're trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to get this into my schedule, you have a lot of flexibility in terms of who is teaching the course. And the materials are such that I believe that anybody who goes through the online training that they have, like at NEFI, or uses something like the Jumpstart or some of the other curriculum opportunities we talked to you about through the Federal Reserve or through this Making Sense project, I think that the materials are such that anybody with a college degree who is willing to go through the training can absolutely take kids through these programs. And it's really good. I mean, our principal, we just had a meeting last night. We're looking at our graduation requirements, and he said he's done some observations in this classroom. He said, I'm not really 100% certain I actually knew what they were talking about in terms of, like, he did not know that he knew the answers to some of the questions. And he said, it's really great information. Like, the kids are really getting all kinds of, really beneficial information about their financial health as they move forward in their lives. So I think when we really look at Capstone courses and at courses, and when we want to make sure that our students have great educations, well-rounded educations, that we're putting out good citizens in the state of Pennsylvania, I think you have to really think about financial literacy as part of that. Our students are coming out of college right now with more debt than they ever have. Historically, they have more challenges financially as young adults than they've ever had. And I think to not have them prepared in this key aspect really is not doing them a great service. I really appreciate your time. If anyone has any questions for me, you can certainly type them to Hilary. I'll be glad to answer them. You can also access me directly through my email or give me a phone call. We've been doing this a while now, and it's been great. I think that our students have really benefited, and I'm really proud of the work that our teachers have done on this specific project and how it's impacted our kids. So thank you, Hilary.
Thank you so much, David. Any questions for David? I'm going to start with one of my own. So David, I'm just curious, when you, in offering this course, you noted that you have it one semester of personal finance and one semester of economics. Does that mean that half of your students take one first and half take the other, and then they switch between the two semesters?
We do offer it sometimes like that. In general, we offer economics in the fall and personal finance in the spring.
Okay.
But they're not prerequisites neither for the other. I mean, they're separate courses. So we've had juniors take the course because they got into their schedule and it was better for them that year, and they were going to take some additional college courses or something the following year. So we don't have a prerequisite one over the other.
And I'm curious, you made a switch from offering it as a freshman to offering it, or requiring it of seniors. You mentioned if sometimes the juniors take it because of a scheduling piece. I find that's an interesting dynamic. I'm curious what your feelings are there. I know some school districts that offer it are required of freshmen. They say, it just doesn't have the same meaning to them sometimes because they haven't necessarily started to drive and learn what the price of gas or insurance is, or they maybe haven't started to work yet.
I mean, you're absolutely right, and that is the dynamic. That's what we found. We found that freshmen really weren't ready for it. Like, they weren't really conceptualizing what they were going to do out of high school. Whereas the seniors, they are ready for it. I mean, the majority of our seniors probably have a part-time job. They're really looking at their future, and they're hungry for that kind of information at that point, and it really makes an enormous difference. I mean, a lot of times by that point they have their own bank accounts. They certainly have their own bills that they're paying. A lot of them for car insurance and for other things that they're doing, and I think they're really weighing their options too. I mean, we talk about, we always have a kid or two. It doesn't matter. I'm sure every high school has this kind of situation. I call them failure to launch students. So their senior year, they just implode because they don't know what they're going to do next year. And I think that this course has really helped them see, okay, these are the kinds of things I have to think about, because it is a big decision. And a lot of our kids, like I said, if you're a first-time attendee to college, I mean, you may not have all the support at home about taking out debt and going to school. And it's really important for us then to provide that support for them, because we know what the data looks like. We know that if you go to a technical school or you attend a four-year college, that your long-term earnings are so much better, and that your stability in the market, especially as volatile as it's been in terms of employment, is so much better. So I think that those are kind of things that we find are just much better for seniors than they are for younger students.
Yeah. A question from the audience. Any tips that you would offer for other districts? Say, for example, a principal is watching this webinar and says, boy, this would be perfect for my students. How do I generate the buy-in from my superintendent or from the school board or the community members or parents for why this is necessary? And it's a great question, because I've actually heard, for example, in some schools, they say, well, our parents, everybody wants everything to be academic, and if it doesn't have AP in front of it or honors or college prep, they're not going to get the support for it. So I'm curious, from your perspective, how you generate that buy-in, whether from the community or from school district members, or if you found that wasn't a challenge maybe for you guys.
Well, I think if you go out and talk to your constituents, I mean, the majority of them are going to find that financial literacy is something that they don't think students have these days. It depends on how you frame that question, but I mean, every once in a while you'll be downtown and someone will say, what are you guys doing up there at the school? These kids can't even make change. I think I've heard that. I think we've all heard that at some point. But I mean, it is that mentality. It's that belief that our students do not have these skills. They don't have good financial literacy skills. And I think it also is a realization that a lot of our families don't have those skills. And I think if you have an open conversation with your parents about what it actually is that you are doing in financial literacy, it really is more of a guidance course. It really is looking at, okay, we're planning for the student's future. I think you get tremendous buy-in. I mean, we certainly did. It's never been an issue here after we ran our first set of courses, especially as we ran them with seniors, and we're able to talk to the parents about this is what the materials are. The kids are bringing the workbooks home. I mean, our board members who've had kids who come through who came through our school district at our meeting last night, I mean, they just had tremendous things to say about the financial literacy course and how important it has been to have those conversations with our students, because their children understand these significant and important concepts so much better by having them have a course here. So I think it's easy to get by, and I think it just is how you frame that. And if we talk about the fact that kids don't have these basic skills in financial literacy, and that I think people in general would agree that most adults in the state don't have those skills, I think you can make a compelling argument to have this kind of coursework.
That's great. I appreciate that feedback. We had one other question from the audience. Before making this a required course, was this an elective? And if so, about what percentage of your students were taking it? Or was this a shift from nothing to sort of everything?
We always offered economics as an elective, and I'd say quite a few of our students took it. I think we've offered that probably for 20 years. The personal finance course, when we brought it in, it was a requirement. It was required for graduation. We never offered it as an elective because, honestly, after I saw the information and we made our case to the board, they really felt everybody should have it. We used to offer capstone courses in civics and government, and there used to be and we still offer those courses, but when we really looked at what we wanted our students to be able to do when they graduated, one of the things was certainly be financially literate. So it's always been a requirement here since we took it on.
Great. Well, I so appreciate your time and your willingness to share this information with us, and certainly your passion for this definitely shows, and I hope other school administrators and others that are participating in the webinar will be in touch with you and or at least take these messages to heart. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So we're going to turn now to Dr. Andrew Hill with the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia, who's going to talk to us about some of the research to help to further make the case in support of financial education. Andrew, are you on the line with us?
I'm here, Hilary. Thanks so much for having me.
Wonderful. I am turning the controls over to you, sir.
Okay, sounds good. I'm going to get my screen up here. So hopefully you can see my PowerPoint now.
I can, yes. Thank you very much.
Perfect. So I want to talk today a little bit about the research on the importance of financial education. I'm primarily going to talk about two papers. There certainly are certainly a lot more studies out there, but these are two studies that I look to quite frequently in terms of understanding a little bit about why personal financial education is effective, what we know about its impact both on student knowledge as well as on future behaviors. So I first should mention that all the views that I'm expressing in this presentation are my own and not necessarily those of my employer, the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia, or those of the Federal Reserve System. So first I want to talk a little bit about our own program here at the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia and the research that we've done on its effectiveness. So our high school personal finance program is called Keys to Financial Success. We've been doing this program since 2001, and we've trained over 380 teachers to teach this program. They teach in about 170 schools in the tri-state area, and by that I mean New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. These are the three states that we serve here at the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia. And each year those teachers reach over 10,000 students. One of the things that has been really fantastic about this program is that we've been able to pre- and post-test students for many years over a long period of time and be able to assess the success of this program in terms of pre- and post-test data. So we began this as a partnership with the University of Delaware Center for Economic Education, which I should mention is one of the leading centers for economic education in the country. And it's a very valuable resource to us here at the Philly Fed, as well as for teachers across Pennsylvania, many of whom had gone and done the Master's in Economic Education program at the University of Delaware. We had a number of goals when we started this program. One of them was we wanted to be able to provide training and materials to support teachers teaching a semester personal finance course. Back in 2001, schools were interested in offering a personal finance course, but there weren't nearly as many possibilities out there, and there certainly weren't very many people doing the type of intensive training that we do here that leads then to being able to teach a semester personal finance course that's pedagogically sound and that's also grounded in what we call the economic way of thinking. So that is to say, teaching personal finance from the perspective of economics, and that is teaching personal finance from the perspective of good decision making. What does it mean to make a decision? And teaching students about decision making. And so you can think about all of the possible connections to decision making and why those are important things for students to learn, whether it be about whether or not they're going to go to college, how much student loan debt they're going to take out, even whether they're going to stay in school if you're in a high-risk district where students are dropping out. The other thing we wanted to do is to be able to provide flexibility for teachers to be able to use the materials in a variety of classes. And we've been successful in this. We have teachers who are teaching our KEYS program who are family and consumer science teachers. We have teachers who are in business ed. We have teachers who are social studies teachers. We have people who have been coupling this personal finance course with a semester economics course. And of course, as I mentioned, we wanted to be able to assess program effectiveness using pre and post testing. And a lot of programs are out there, but they don't necessarily have the ability to do the type of intensive testing that we've been able to do using nationally normed instruments. So just a little background on what this program is. It's a 52-lesson curriculum, and it organizes mostly existing materials and activities. We did write some additional material, but when we started this program, there were a number of very nice, very good, high-quality curricula out there that were grounded in the economic way of thinking, principally the Council for Economic Education's Financial Fitness for Life and Learning, Earning, and Investing curricula. But they were not organized in such a way as to create a semester course. And one of the things we recognized is that particularly in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware, where we have a lot of school districts, we have local control, and districts generally make their own curriculum decisions, schools needed an efficient way to be able to get up and running with their own semester personal finance course. To us, it didn't make a lot of sense for a lot of public money to be spent in creating individual courses in individual districts. Rather, it would make sense for us to be able to provide that level of expertise. The other thing we wanted to make sure that we did is provide sufficient pedagogical content knowledge for teachers so that they're able to teach this content. We recognize that most teachers do not necessarily have the pedagogical content knowledge to be able to teach a personal finance course going into the opportunity where their school would be asking them to do that. So we provide a week-long professional development training here at the Philadelphia Fed as a way of getting teachers up and running on teaching this course and understanding better what is the pedagogy that they need to understand in order to be able to effectively teach personal finance. So how does the curriculum work? I already mentioned that we have a number of lessons that we've drawn from the Council for Economic Education's materials, and we do this via the Virtual Economics for 4.5 thumb drive, which we supply to the teachers. I should mention, by the way, that we provide all these materials free of charge. The only thing we do is charge a $50 registration fee for the professional development training in order to make sure that teachers have some skin in the game and they make sure that they get to the training. We also have some lessons that we've drawn from Visa Practical Money Skills. Those also are drawn together by our Keys to Financial Success Teachers Manual. And then we created materials, additional activities that are used in 23 of the 52 lessons. So some additional material that we knew we needed to have in order to make this be a semester course. I emphasize that training teachers matters, that training really makes a difference. And we see this, by the way, both in terms of we've had some teachers who had to start without the training, and when they come back later and get the training, they say, you know, the training really makes a big difference in terms of my effectiveness about being able to teach this. And we also can see that in terms of the pre and post testing results for their students. So put together, these curriculum materials via a trained teacher has results in impacting student achievement in personal finance. We were able to publish a study using that pre and post testing data. The study is Asarda, Hill, and Mazzaros. It was published in 2014 in the International Review of Economics Education. We use a nationally normed test. It's actually the Financial Fitness for Life high school test. Some of the very best studies right now that have been published are using this instrument. And we're able to compare then our results not only to the norming results, which is when the test was written, it was sent out in order to get a nationally representative normed sample, and we're also able to compare our results then to the other studies that have been published using this test. We used students from two different semester-long cohorts. One is the 2011-2012 school year, so that's both fall and spring, and then also the 2012-2013 school year. We have a relatively high percentage of young students in this. Many of the schools that are choosing to use the Keys to Financial Success model, they are actually offering this to freshmen and sophomores. And we have roughly a split between males and females, although we have a bit higher male percentage in the cohort. So these are our overall results, and the blue there are the comparison. These are from the norming of the Financial Fitness for Life test. The red bar that you see there are our students. This was their average result on the Keys to Financial Success pretest, 41.5% correct. This is a hard test. There's no question about that, but our students start further behind than the students who were in the norming sample. And then our students in the end, after a semester of personal finance using the Keys to Financial Success model, they get 66.8% correct on the post-test. And you can compare them to the 56% correct from the norming sample. And I should also mention that students in the norming sample overwhelmingly were in economics courses. So it's not just that the students need economics in order to understand personal finance better. They need a dedicated personal finance course that's grounded in the economic way of thinking. Now this table is right from our paper. It shows a lot of data here, but I want to emphasize a few things just for our discussion today. And that is some discussion about where do students start out in terms of their knowledge of personal finance. What's definitely true is that students do not necessarily have trouble in every particular area of the test, but there are some areas that are particularly challenging for them. So, for instance, in this section, and we're looking here at the income and money management sections of our study, students had a lot of trouble with opportunity cost, which, by the way, I should mention, that's a key economic concept that says, you know, if you make a decision, then when you make that decision, you give up some other option. Something else is given up when you make a decision. Students don't do well on that, not at all. Our students, of course, gain significantly over the course of the Keys program, but nonetheless, they have trouble starting out there. They have a lot of difficulty understanding about inflation and investing. But there's some other areas, budgeting they're particularly poor on, the use of money management tools they're particularly poor on, getting less than 40% correct. We do, of course, exhibit across the board significant gains in all of these areas. Looking now at the spending and credit as well as the saving and investing sections of this test, there's a number of areas also where they're really quite poor. Basically no knowledge, close to no knowledge in some of these areas. One of them is sources of credit, credit history and records. So these are topics that are more advanced topics in personal finance. And one of the things that this shows us is that teaching personal finance to kids really requires significant time on task. We need to be covering a wide range of topics. It's not just about the importance of saving, for instance, and I'll talk about that in just a second. One of the things I want to point out on that is that here's this 87% correct, and this is admittedly a relatively easy question, but it's on the reasons for saving and investing. Students do well on that. And one of the things I think that indicates is students understand that they need to save. They understand why they need to save. It's not these sort of surface topics that are the most important in terms of making a difference in students' financial literacy. It's deeper topics like, as I said, the credit reports, the credit history, the more complex issues of personal finance. This is our overall result comparing here now to the norming sample, and you'll see that across the four sections our students gain significantly, and our students are outpacing those students in that nationally normed representative sample. And so we're very proud of this result, and it gives a lot of validity to the model that we're using in terms of training teachers and then sending them out with high quality materials in order to teach students. And this is just a graphical form showing again that our students gain significantly. So what did we learn? Well, we learned that keys to financial success works. We learned that training materials matter, but also that we've gotten some metrics now so that we are able to fine-tune our training. We're able to emphasize to teachers that they shouldn't just be teaching their students about the importance of saving. It's the deeper and more complex issues of personal finance that their students need to be equipped with before they go out into the world of work and off to college. There's some limitations. One of them is that we know that the students gained in their knowledge over the semester, but we don't necessarily know what the decay is. We're not able to follow these students out beyond this course. Once they leave the teachers that we've trained and our cadre of teachers, we're not able to then be able to test them. And the other thing we don't know is what the effect is on future behaviors. We have some additional research that's completed, as well as some more that's coming up. We've looked at gender differences. I did this with my colleague Carlos Asarda. This is forthcoming in a Springer International Personal Finance Handbook, hopefully. We found that there's not much difference between males and females in our cohort, although the females do just slightly better on some of the questions. That's a very positive result because in the literature we've seen that males tend to be doing a little bit better in other studies. But in our cohort, our females tend to be doing just slightly better, but for the most part, our males and females are equal. So that's a great result. I also wrote a paper with Rebecca Chambers that was published in Perspectives of Economic Education Research, and that looks at teachers' human capital. And one of the things we find there is that the training does matter. It's the teachers post-test. We post-test the teachers, pre and post-test them as part of the training. We find that teachers who do better at the end of the training, they have students who do better in terms of their personal finance knowledge gain as part of the course. We're now looking at semester versus year-long courses because we know that we have a number of teachers who are teaching the course as a semester. We want to see whether, as a year-long, we want to see whether they do better than the teachers who are just teaching in a semester. And we're also very interested in understanding more about whether younger students or older students are doing better in these courses, because course timing is a question that's really out there that's mattered a lot. I want to turn here and take a look at a different paper, and this is a very exciting paper. This paper came out this spring, and it's called State Financial Education Mandates. It's all in the implementation. And I really encourage you to read this paper. One of the things we're very hopeful for in terms of things going forward in Pennsylvania is that we would get a mandated high school personal finance course. I've been very open about saying that over time. I think that it does matter. But this paper gives us a lot of evidence that mandated personal finance courses do have an impact on young people going forward out beyond high school. So what they did in this study is they looked at 3 states, Georgia, Idaho, and Texas, that put in place state personal finance mandates. Then they look at some comparison states, states that are actually very close, who did not put in place a mandate over the same time period. So here we're looking at average credit scores in both the treatment and the control. So the treatment are the brown states there. The control are the blue states. And you'll see that in each of these cases, the control state, the state that didn't put in place the mandate, before the mandates were put in place, their students were doing better in terms of credit scores. But now looking forward towards what happens after those mandates are put in place, we see that actually the students that are coming out of schools in those states where the mandated course was put in place, those students are actually exhibiting better credit scores, especially in the year 2 and year 3 cohorts. So what does that mean? Well, the first year cohort, those are the first students who were subject to the mandate. They don't do much better than their predecessors who weren't facing the mandate. But then when you start to look at year 2 and year 3, those students have credit scores that are higher than their comparison students in the comparison states. So these are differences of the 3 treatment states from those states that did not receive a mandate. So one of the things I think this shows is teachers need a little bit of time and practice, particularly in year 1, to get up and running in terms of offering these courses. But then we start to see these positive effects after you put a mandated course in place. looking at 90-day delinquency rates on accounts, we see again here between the treatment states and the control states, before the treatment states put in place their mandates, there's not much difference between these states. But then afterwards, again, in year 2 and year 3 after the mandate, we're seeing those cohorts of students have lower delinquency rates. So this is some of the best evidence that we're getting that shows that requiring a personal finance course really does matter in terms of impacting your kids, impacting them as adults. One of the things that I always talk about is I go around the country when we're traveling and people will ask me things like, you know, they'll ask me what you do, right? That's part of a conversation you always have. And when I tell them that I train teachers to teach kids about money and personal finance, they always tell me they think this is important. They always tell me that they think that this is something that they wish that they had had in school or that their kids had had in school. And they always ask me, why aren't more schools doing this? And so I'm very excited that we're now getting this kind of evidence that can be then taken to school boards and used to show that, you know, this is a course that can really make a big difference in students' lives going forward. Just very quickly, we have a lot of teacher training programs at the Philadelphia Fed. We have a number of programs coming up this fall. All of them are actually on personal finance. So I encourage you to go to our webpage, philadelphiafed.org/education, and check out our offerings and certainly send teachers our way. We're very excited to be able to get more teachers in our programs. We always want to fill those up and make a difference. So I thank you really much for your time, and I'm really glad to be able to share just these 2 papers with you. But I think the evidence is building over time that these are important courses that we need to be offering kids. Hilary, do we have any questions?
Andrew, thank you so much. We do have a question, but I think you addressed it later. There was a question about, does the personal finance course need to be for a semester long, or can it be for less? I think that's asking about the Keys to Financial Success program in particular. I know you were talking about studying going forward sort of the efficacy of programs, the educational efficacy of programs based on their duration. But if you want to just talk about that for a moment, that would be great.
Well, overwhelmingly, when you go and you look at the literature, and by that I mean the papers that have been published. Now, there's a couple of issues. One is that there are a number of papers that have been published over time that have looked at relatively short interventions. There's also a number of papers that have not necessarily used the most robust statistical methods. But when you look at the fact that there are a lot of papers published on short interventions, and by that I mean personal finance units or half semesters or assembly programs or speakers coming into classrooms once for an hour every month, it tends to show that those shorter interventions don't have an impact on student achievement in personal finance or potentially attitudes about personal finance. So for me, really the place where we're seeing these positive effects are in the longer interventions, and by that I mean the semester. So I think that what we know from the literature is short interventions don't work. I understand why, given relatively scarce classroom time, it would be attractive to do a short intervention. But given the importance of this topic in terms of affecting our society and students' success in life, I think it's really important to be looking at a semester in high school as a capstone.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that, and I think the information that you provided will, certainly does help to make the case for why this is necessary. So thank you so much, Andrew.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, very much. Thank you for joining us. All right, we're going to turn to the last portion of our agenda, talking about additional resources for implementing a financial education program in your school district. Again, this is Hilary Hunt, and I am the coordinator for the Making Sense Project, the partnership between the Department of Education here in Pennsylvania and Penn State University. And I wanted to just mention, we heard from both David and Andrew that there's a lot of free resources out there, and I just wanted to drive that home with these 2 slides, talking about or showing you just some of the providers of financial education that are out there that do a fantastic job of providing these materials free of charge for schools and for districts, whether that be free online, such as the Take Charge Today or Practical Money Skills or Hands-on Banking, the Federal Reserve Education financialeducation.org, Money Skills, all of these are free online. The National Endowment for Financial Education's high school financial planning program that David mentioned will also send you their student booklets in however many that you need. In print form every year. They're a consumable product for students. So again, you can implement a course or a program in financial education at many different grade levels, not just the high school level, but at many different grade levels, without investing in resources other than downloading materials or accessing them online or putting in a request for these free ones. And then there's lots of other supplementary resources online as well. This is just a sampling of some of the ones that are out there. So your teachers that want to bring a course in financial education to life or augment what they're already doing have so many different resources that are available to them. And that's something that we do in our ongoing work with the Making Sense project, is to make teachers aware of these resources and help them to use them. At our lower grade levels, we are strong advocates of integrating financial education into the core curriculum, and that is certainly doable within the English language arts curriculum. This is just a sample of some of the popular books out there that address personal finance concepts, and there's lots of other ways to integrate these topics in with what's already being done and align these to the English language arts and math curriculum. Also, speaking of the resources that are required to do this, I wanted to make all of our administrators aware that there is a grant program available from Discover that will be coming available again here after the first of next year. So I'd encourage high schools, this one's specific to high schools, to take a look at this grant and see how they might use it to help support their efforts in providing financial education. This grant is really looking at schools that are having a standalone course, and I understand that this year they're really going to be placing an emphasis on school districts that are making this a requirement or looking to make it a requirement. There is a pre and post test that's required of the students, but other than that, the requirements to get this grant are pretty minimal. I think most of the schools that I know that have done it have been surprised about how easy it has been to apply for this grant. And I know schools that have purchased a cart of iPads, for example, to be able to augment their course with digital resources. So you really take a look at this if this is something that's of interest to you. So back to the Making Sense PA project. This is what we started with in the beginning, and the project that I coordinate here in Pennsylvania on behalf of the Department of Education in Penn State. And our program is trying to support schools and teachers in offering financial education throughout the pre-K to 12 curriculum. And we do a number of things to help support that. Most importantly, coming up next week is actually our very first webinar of the school year for teachers. And we will offer these 6 times throughout the school year. And then each time we do them twice on those days to allow for varying teacher schedules. Each of them has a mix of topics and presenters. So you'll hear, just like in this webinar, you'll hear from different folks and offered again through the GoToWebinar platform. And for these teacher webinars, we do offer Act 48 credit. This is the schedule for our 2015-2016 series. It follows the topics that I'll talk about in just a moment in our model curriculum. So we'll begin with money management and go all the way through saving and investing in April. And again, we offer each of these at 2 times, the first beginning at 3 p.m. and the second beginning at 6:30. Again, you can sign up for these webinars or encourage your teachers to sign up for these webinars online at our website. I'd also encourage everybody to sign up for our e-blasts. These are an electronic newsletter that goes out several times throughout the year with information and resources to help implement financial education in the curriculum. And then also I draw your attention to a site or a tab on our site with research that supports financial education as well. And now let me talk about a little bit about the tools that we've been working to develop that makes this even easier for school districts and helps to align financial education to the core curriculum and to the Pennsylvania academic standards. So we have a model pre-K to 12 curriculum that focuses on the what should be taught aspect. So we've identified long-term transfer goals, big ideas, 6 big ideas, and then within each of those big ideas, we have a number of essential questions that are tied to each of those. Those of you who are familiar with curriculum design will recognize this as a familiar framework, and what we've tried to do is really just take a lot of the work out of doing this, in particular for schools that are starting from scratch, trying to make it as easy as possible. Certainly take this and do with it as you please in terms of modifying it to fit your own needs, but we've tried to give everybody a sort of a springboard from which they can begin their own efforts. And then within each of the big ideas and essential questions, we've identified core concepts and competencies at each of the various grade levels, and we've correlated to those to where you'll find this in the Pennsylvania academic standards. So we've identified the standards correlations for economics, family and consumer science, career education and work, and business computer information technology. So all of this legwork has already been done for the schools and for the teachers in helping to figure out a good sound basis for this curriculum at all these grade levels. This information can be found on the Standards Aligned System. It's pdesas.org under Curriculum Framework, and then under the tab for Personal Finance Model Curriculum. Now that's all available on the front side of SAS. I'm going to talk next about some of the how to accomplish this and where that lives on the back end of SAS in the Teachers Tools section. So here we're looking at how does that the what should be taught get translated in the classroom, and we're looking at the integration of personal finance concepts in math, English language arts, social studies, as well as classroom management, interestingly enough, because we found a lot of schools and a lot of teachers were able to implement some of this in the construct of classroom management with, in particular, with those teachers that are using some type of a token economy in their classroom and teaching students to earn those tokens or whatever form they're using, the concept of delayed gratification and saving those for something bigger, and having to wait for that something bigger versus spending those tokens early on. And then within all of this, we've given clear grade by grade delineation. So this is often a complaint of teachers that say, okay, well, everything's at a, say for the first grade band is at grade 3. Well, what does that mean for pre-K, K1 and 2, and third grade, and how does that break out? So we do have some grade band summaries, but I think what's probably most useful for teachers are our individual grade level summaries, where we've said, hey, let's break this down. What does this specifically look like in kindergarten? And what does this specifically look like in first grade? And when we present this information to teachers, it seems a lot more doable to them than when we give them the entire framework. A first grade teacher says, hey, yeah, these are 3 things I can do, and this I can see, integrating and implementing quite easily. And then we take that and we've given them integration strategies. So we talk about, what are the specific, maybe 2, 3, or 4 things that we want them to do in that grade level, and then we give them some ways to consider going about doing that. And then at the high school level, we turn to a 1-semester capstone course, like both David and Andrew were talking about earlier. Our preference here is that it be taught in the 11th or 12th grades, where students have that sort of vested interest, like we spoke about before. They've started to earn an income. They started to learn what it takes to put gas in the car, pay for insurance, all of those kinds of things. And as we mentioned earlier as well, there's a lot of flexibility in terms of what department this course can be taught in or what the certification is of the teacher that is teaching it. So it could be taught by a family consumer science teacher, a business teacher, social studies, or math. Any of those are eligible to teach this course in Pennsylvania. And again, we start with that, the model curriculum and the big ideas, and then we translate those big ideas into modules. So we have 6 modules. Included in the information that we provide to the schools is also a suggested pacing guide, so approximately how many weeks in a semester-long course to devote to each of these. And then the specific objectives, and the objectives are all tied to the standards, our focus and our important standards. And then we provide misconceptions and proper conceptions, the concepts, competencies, and vocabularies, the assessment items, suggested ways to assess for this content. And then we give lots of different opportunities for the elements of instruction, almost all of which are free of charge. So every single one of our modules has, by objective, these elements of instruction listed, and there's at least one or two free options within each of those. The few that do charge, or a lot of those do come from the Financial Fitness for Life curriculum that Dr. Hill mentioned a few minutes ago, and are part of the Financial Fitness or that Financial Fitness for Life program. That is relatively inexpensive, and certainly also a great resource. And then we include suggestions for differentiating, as well as interdisciplinary connections, and then lots of additional resources. You can find this tool, again, on the SAS Standards Aligned System, pdesas.org. This does require a login, and then from the login, you would go to Teacher Tools, and then the Curriculum Mapping section, and then to the Pennsylvania Standards Instructional Frameworks for Personal Finance. And here you'll find, again, all these long-term goals, big ideas, and essential questions, the grade level summaries, the grade band summaries, the modules by grade level, and the components of all of this. So I would encourage you to share this information with teachers. We've really tried to take a lot of the work off of their plate in developing a tool that is easy for them to use and easy for them to sort of pick and choose. It's also a great tool for schools that already have a course in personal finance to be able to say, let's benchmark off of these. What are these? Which of these things are we doing already? Where might we be able to augment and use some of these new resources that are provided here or linked here? When you go to one of the modules on SAS, this is what it looks like. Where you'll see all the information that I was talking about earlier, and everything. When you get into, all the standards are hyperlinked, all the lessons are hyperlinked, etc. Some of them do require a teacher login, which is free, for example, from the National Endowment for Financial Education's website or from the Taking Charge website. They just require registration so that they are sure that the answer keys and other things that they're providing are being used and accessed by teachers only. If you'd like to get a hard copy PDF of this, some folks complain that the version off of SAS, if they print it, is a very small font. So we have made that available through our financial education professional learning community on SAS. So you would go to the SAS Learning Community Navigator, type in financial education, and join our financial education learning community. And then from there, if you scroll down into that, you'll see the model curriculum available there for a download. This work would not have been possible without the contributions of many teachers that participated in this project and were incredibly valuable in helping us to put this together. And they came together from all over the state to work on this project. Most recent addition to our toolkit, and we will actually be launching this with our webinar next week with teachers, is a new iTunes U course devoted to financial education. So I'd encourage you to participate in the upcoming webinar and learn more about that. That course provides lots of additional electronic resources, everything from videos to podcasts to apps and more that align with the model course. Schools do not need to have iPads in order to make use of these resources. We're going to be talking about how you can download an entire spreadsheet of those information so that no matter what tools you have available for students to access the internet, that they would be able to draw upon and use most of these resources. And again, that was developed by a fantastic team of educators. In our last minute or two here, I just would encourage you to connect with us in whatever social media platforms you are on. So Facebook, Pinterest, and Twitter, we have a presence on all three. And finally, encourage you again to sign up for those webinars that are coming up throughout the year. And to pass that information along to other educators that might be interested. And again, I have the dates for the sessions that Andrew talked about at the Federal Reserve Bank as well. If there are any questions, I would be happy to take those, but I thank everybody for their time and their interest and their participation today, and I look forward to your continued involvement and support of financial education. Thank you, everybody, for participating, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their day.